the source of income.
Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Streets and Walkways Subcommittee. As you may be aware, the public element of the meeting is being recorded, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018. And for any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. At item 1, we have apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from Deborah Oliver, and the Deputy Chair has indicated that she may need to leave before the end of the meeting. Are there any other apologies that I should be aware of? That's good, thank you. Moving on to item 2. Which is members' declarations under the Code of Conduct. I've not received notice of any declarations unless any members would like to make one now.
Chair, thank you very much. Could I make a declaration of interest in item 4 Arthur Street, as I am a resident at 6 Martin Lane, which butts onto Arthur Street?
Thank you. Moving on now to the minutes. This is the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of September, which appear from page 5 of the agenda pack. There is an amendment that I'd like to notify to minute 5, which is the advertising board update. And it's to the first complete, that's on the first complete paragraph of page 7, which begins, for members who supported option 2. The amendment itself begins in the 3rd sentence of that paragraph, beginning A boards highlighted, and reads as follows. A boards highlighted these types of locations and attracted pedestrians to explore them, a position which had been supported during informal consultation with the Fleet Street Quarter BID. A boards in these areas could not be said to cause an obstruction, as they were placed to the side of the road away from pedestrians who walked in the middle. Members who supported option 2 did not accept that the desire for a simplified ban rule across the city outweighed the harm that it will cause to small businesses. They proposed an exception for these areas, including streets with timed closures. So the proposal is that that paragraph will replace the paragraph which appeared in the original minutes. So the minutes are here for agreement, and so subject to that amendment to the text of the advertising board update, may I ask if members are happy to approve the minutes? Thank you. So moving on to item 4, sorry.
Chair, if I may raise a matter arising on the minutes, and it's in relation to minute 7 on pages 9 to 11, which is Pedestrian Priority Streets Programme, Old Jewry. And I'd just like to seek clarification as to when officers intend to implement the agreed option, given that there are other traffic constrictions around the city at the moment, and if it were implemented immediately, would cause potential difficulty.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and that's a concern that we have in relation to considering the implementation. So we are looking to proceed with the procedural side of the change in relation to the end of the experimental traffic order, which is in early January. The current state of work at St Martin's le Grand, Newgate Street and Cheapside Junction, which is where the traffic would flow through, is likely to be constrained until about September next year. So it's our current thinking that what we would do is procedurally allow the decision to play out, but we would then implement a temporary traffic order to enable Old Jewry to remain open until such time as the work on that route has been completed. So effectively, the decision taken by this committee still stands, but we would implement it at an appropriate time when the traffic congestion and disruption that's being caused by other works on the network has ceased, and that would be, at the moment, about September next year.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So, Edward, that means then that the 5-minute delay, which was the balance that we voted on, will still be 5 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed. And one further point of clarification, I believe that we asked officers to go away and consult with members in the wards affected, which I think are Cheap, Walbrook and Cordwainer, which is on the other side of Cheapside. Has that been done?
We did communicate with the wards of, I mean, it's the two, I must admit we did the 2 wards because Old Jewry sits across 2 wards. The boundary runs down part of the road. So we notified the ward members of both of those 2 wards of the decision, and we, to this point, we have not had any further communication either for or against the proposal. So the ward members directly related to Old Jewry have not given us any further comment.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask that question about the members of the ward being consulted, and we were told that we had to agree. It was important that we took the decision at the last meeting, because if we didn't take the decision, it would impact on the traffic order renewal and whatever. So I was quite surprised when we actually had a meeting. This meeting is actually like a month later. So I think that we could and we should have delayed that decision to ensure that the members of the ward had the opportunity to put forward their views. And I will say that when I chaired Streets and Walkways, and equally Jeremy Simons before him, we used to always ensure that regardless of whether or not the member was on planning or a member of this committee, all the ward members were fully engaged with projects at the outset, so that they were aware and they could feed into the development of that project. So by the time it reached this committee, we were fully assured that members were up to speed with the development of proposal and had their input. I think perhaps we should reinstate that if that's not happening now. And I do feel that the ward members who know the ward well and they are in contact with the electorate should have that input. But I was also going to ask the development at the end is Frederick's Place. Different spellings in my name actually. We talked about the 3-point turn of the vehicles. So you have a number of vehicles who come into this road, and the question was, why are they coming through when the road was closed? Why were they still coming through? They were coming through because they were Ubers. People, drop a pin outside Brown's where it was, and the Uber would come in, and then they would have really tricky 3 points.
Marion, excuse me, Marion, we have discussed this at the last meeting. I'm not quite sure where you're going. Just if you could, if you just go to the question, Marianne. And
we asked whether or not the delivery company had been engaged to find out their view on this closure. We were told that they had previously been in favour, and they've been in favour when the road had opened up again. And I think it's important that they are consulted again, because the 3-point turns will have to take place by driving into Frederick's Place and reversing back. And we now know there's going to be bars there, and it's a level road, and there's lots of people standing outside. So I would like some assurance that we actually asked for their input, and equally we asked the input of the ward members. I know you took the decision last time, but I think I voted against that because I didn't think we had all the information in front of us. But I think that it's important that you do have those comments before you implement it.
Go ahead, Ian. Just repeat what you said last time, that you did talk to Mercers. And
just to be clear, perhaps the comment from last committee slightly misleading, slightly taken out of context, and I recall it very well. we did engage with all members when we were doing the consultation for the scheme as it was. So remember, this was a experimental traffic order where you consult during the traffic order and get people's views from a wide variety of sources as to how well or not they feel the experiment is working. All members were engaged in that consultation, as were the Mercers. Neither the members nor the Mercers chose to express a view during the course of that process. So then when the report came to committee, we did not at that point say this is the decision that we are recommending to committee, but we did engage with members to give them the opportunity to have their view both on how the street worked before and how it was working now. We have since engaged with those same members and they continue not to express a view, to which it's difficult to argue. I would suggest that we need to do further engagement with members because we've done it both before and after, and the same with the Mercers. And the Mercers are clearly very proud of that investment in Fredericks Place, and so are we. The Mercers were very supportive of the change when we closed the road. Equally, they were very supportive of the change when we opened the road. Their position throughout all of this has been, we're prepared to work with you to support what you want to do. They have not sought specifically to drive their own agenda. They do have that interest in Fredericks Place. We will continue to work with them. We have engaged specifically with them since last Streets and Walkways Committee. And just say in terms of the timing, we are, if we do not do anything in relation to the experimental traffic order, then it will lapse and the street will go back to how it was before. The process would have been if we needed to, if committee had made the decision to keep the traffic order in place of what's there now, then we would have been doing work now behind the scenes to actually progress that process of creating a new permanent traffic order. And actually the month that we've had since then, we would have been doing more work. The fact that the committee made the decision it did means that actually we can now in effect allow the ETO to lapse and it will go back to being a closed road. But that extra month would have been time that we would have used to work through the statutory process that we have to do behind the scenes. Chair.
Thanks, Ian. We're moving on. Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, we have a report concerning a section 278 agreement with Transport for London for the reinstatement of Arthur Street. This is the decision from page 21 of the agenda pack.
Right, so I know some people have got some things to say about Arthur Street, which is not directly related to what we're voting on, but having said that, I understand there's some strong feelings about the history of that. So this is an opportunity to say them.
That's me. Thank you. So Arthur Street is partly in my ward. It's also in Bridge Without with Hugh, and also in Candlewick. So it's a real split of areas. But I think we've all been concerned about the fact that Arthur Street, as mentioned in the document, has been closed for a very long time. It's continuing to be closed. And the concern that I have is that it will continue to be closed both until TfL have done the work to fill in the shaft and do some work to the road, and then continue thereafter until the corporation has done its work. Now, I know I have had, to be honest, a long conversation with Ian Hughes. He has explained this, but I do think I'd like to ask the question more in public as to the, in part, the reason for the delay without any huge long discussion maybe, but also to see what we can do in order to make it as usable as possible in the meantime, because at the moment there's a very narrow pathway down the west side of Arthur Street which people can walk down, but it is used by cyclists, delivery bikes. It can be very dangerous. It's on quite a steep hill, so it has all those problems as well. And we should try and make it, if we can, to move the hoardings into, away from the pavement to make the pavement wider. I don't know how realistic that is, but at the moment we're facing closure for just about another year from all accounts, and I think it would make that road a much nicer road to navigate. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, just to say the report itself is about us entering into agreement with TfL for the city to undertake the permanent reinstatement of the street level, so the surface level, rather than the shaft that sits below it, and all of that at TfL's expense. So this is a good thing. This is TfL saying we, the corporation, will take on doing that final piece of work on their behalf, and we get a quality of public realm that this committee has already determined what's going back in there. So this is all about the work itself. The delay, the overall delay, has been caused by the fact that there was an agreement between the city and TfL to have the shaft removed as part of the work that was built as part of the work to do the Northern Line upgrade. TfL gave a commitment to remove that shaft and then found subsequently that they couldn't do it. And so there has been a protracted series of discussions between the city as landowner and TfL about reaching an agreement in terms of allowing that to remain in place. So TfL are now undertaking the work to reinstate the shaft. What we have identified is there is a significant amount of enabling work that they did as well in this street to enable the shaft to be built. So there is concrete everywhere, reinforcement, blocks, the whole work. So they are having to take all of that out. What that means is when they finish their work and hand over to us, the street will still be in no fit state to even be opened up partially, which was what we had hoped. So we then need to go in, hoardings, we take over the hoardings, and we do our design work. We then do our procurement of our materials to actually deliver the scheme as was intended. So that means TfL's current programme is they will finish in January. We're then looking at certainly a sort of 4-month, 5-month period, maybe that includes the design work, but also then the procurement of all the materials. And then actually once we're in, I'm hopeful that actually the works will proceed at pace. So what you're seeing at the moment is an intensive period of work from TfL. Therefore, they're followed by, I would appreciate, a frustrating fallow period, but that should be the final window, and then we will come back and take over from there. What I would say is that once TfL move away, we are owning the comms, so it will be our hoarding, our comms to stakeholders and businesses in the area about how that's being managed, being clear about the programme as well. And very much the point from the Alderman, we will be looking to see whether it's possible to pinch the hoarding in to allow more space for cyclists and pedestrians around that hoarding area to make it a better space for the duration of that fallow period and then progress as soon as possible afterwards. I cannot give a firm commitment about timescales because to a degree we have to see what TfL give us when they finish their work, but I'll certainly be in touch with the Alderman offline from this meeting, and that will be part of our comms to all the residents and businesses in the area once we take control of the site. Chair.
Is that okay? Anyone else on that? Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. I know although it's going to close the junction with King William Street to motorised vehicles permanently, what bit of resilience have we introduced in case we needed to bring vehicles off the bridge if there was a road closure or whatever? So I wondered whether or not we shouldn't be building in some resilience. And at the moment, because you're narrowing the junction at the top of King William Street to put the public seating and the trees and everything, you're narrowing it, and then it widens out again. Would that be sufficient space to allow a motorised vehicle to be able to come off the bridge if we needed to get vehicles off the bridge because there was an incident down on the main road? So what I want to be was have some assurance, if we haven't thought about it, perhaps we should, to have that flexibility that we can move vehicles off that network road if an incident occurs, given its location.
Yeah, this is a revisit of what's a plan that's already been approved. But Ian, if you feel comfortable to comment, go ahead.
I think in terms of an incident, it's always a challenge to cope with where traffic might go. There are all sorts of scenarios that we try and work through. I'm not sure that this would be possible to open up in those sorts of scenarios. It might be more possible for planned works that do take place where you're looking at an extended period of time. What I would say is that as part of this piece of work by TfL, I have been critical of TfL in my earlier comments. I'm positive about what TfL did in as much as they removed the biggest constraints on traffic in this area, which was actually the weight limit on the pedestrian subways at the top of London Bridge. If you remember, when this street was open, it was used because traffic couldn't go over London Bridge and then across to Eastcheap or to Bishopsgate or to Cannon Street. All the 8 heavy vehicles had to go down Arthur Street because you couldn't drive over the pedestrian subway. They fixed that as part of the work to make sure that they could actually get their construction traffic over this area. So the biggest constraint about resilience in the area has actually been removed as part of this scheme, Chair.
Thank you. So with that question answered, are we all in favour to authorise Office to negotiate the 278 agreement with TfL? Yes.
Thank you. Item 6 is an outcome report for a public realm enhancement project around the redevelopment of 100 Fetter Lane. It is for decision and is from page 45 of the pack. Thank you.
Chairman, what happened to item 5?
Oh, apologies. Yeah. Oh, it's gone right at the bottom of the page. That's what's happened there. So item 5, yes, is a report on Crossrail. Sorry, it's about changes to the public realm across the wider Liverpool Street area, and it's for decision from page 29 of the pack. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before we start, can Tom explain the working group? Because I misread the text. It looked like you're eliminating one group and creating another, but that isn't the case. So if you could explain what that meant. Thank you, Tom.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so in paragraph 5.4, it mentions that a Liverpool Street stakeholder group will be established. This will be established to look at changes around the station more broadly, might be on public realm, but we think that this is the right forum to govern this Healthy Street plan, rather than creating a separate group, especially just for the Healthy Street plan. So it's more coordinated all around. Right. So it's still there's going to be a working group, and it's encompassing a wider remit to include this. Yes, and we're just not proposing to create an additional group on top of that. That's fine. Are there any other questions on this? Yeah, go ahead, you.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps it's on the same point. Oh gosh, I've lost it. One of the recommendations is to rename the group, and one is to discontinue the group. Okay. Presumably the intention is not to discontinue the group, it is to rename it, given that we're transferring a load of money to it.
Yes. So, thank you, Chair. The previous point was about the working group and the steering of the project. The recommendations in the second part, paragraph 2 of the report, relate to the actual project. So there's an existing project that we're looking to effectively close down and then reconstitute as a programme for the Liverpool Street area. So there was the Crossrail integration project, and the recommendations or requested decisions are to rename that for the Liverpool Street area Healthy Streets programme. Is that?
So are we shutting it down and starting a new one, or are we continuing it and just renaming it? Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we are effectively continuing it, but for finance reasons, we have to close down the existing one and transfer it across. So that's what the recommendations relate to, but essentially it is continuing. It's a bit convoluted, admittedly, but.
So Tom, just to pursue a few questions, so we're not losing any effort or time or experience or more money.
No, thank you, Chair. No, it's just to ensure that we're looking at the wider area beyond just the immediate Crossrail that was the focus of the original project. And now the Healthy Street plan exists and has been adopted, it's looking at that broader remit. Right. So basically, the project is enlarging in the same way as a working group. It's all consistent. Yeah.
Thank you. In that case, that's not what the decisions are, right? The decisions stated. There is no decision. We're not requested to make the decision to establish a new group. And equally, we are requested, decision 2, to rename the existing group. If the intention is to close down the old one and start a new one, should we repurpose decision 2 to be the creation of the new scheme that we're talking, the new project that we're talking about?
Sorry.
Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
The decisions relate to the project / program. The steering group is separate to that. So we will establish a program, and usually what we have for Healthy Streets plans is a steering group of local stakeholders that we work with to kind of oversee the delivery of that. All we're saying here is that there's also going to be a stakeholder group that's going to be looking at the redevelopment of the station should that go ahead. And it doesn't make sense to have two groups because they're the same people, and lots of the public realm improvements that we're looking at are fully or in part related to the works around the station as well. So the steering group, which is how we bring local stakeholders together, there'll only be one, rather than a separate one for the Healthy Streets plan delivery, plus a separate one to look at to coordinate works around the station. The recommendations are about the name of the project, and then closing down one project so we can transfer the funds to the newly renamed project, which are just procedural points that we have to go through to get the money transferred from one place to another place.
I think I understand the intention. What's written on the page doesn't do that. Putting the steering group to one side, the intention, the words on the page say that the urban integration project will be renamed and then shut down. We will not, under the decisions here, perhaps the decision has already been taken elsewhere, or perhaps we don't need to take the decision, but nowhere are we being asked to create the Liverpool Street Area Healthy Streets programme. We're giving that name to a project that we're then shutting down, which I don't think is the intention here.
I appreciate the point you're making, and reading it, I can read it that way. It's not how it was intended to read. What we are doing, just to be clear then, is we are taking a project and renaming it in a way that you would better recognise in the parlance of where we are now. We talk about Healthy Streets plans, whereas when Crossrail were here, we didn't have that. So in terms of renaming the project, that's what we're doing. From a budgetary sense, and from a, perhaps if I could put it this way, a Chamberlain's sense, we have to shut down the old project and take that money and move it into this one. This is somewhat of a unique set of circumstances because what we're actually doing is dealing with a ring-fenced sum of money that was actually provided by Crossrail for these purposes. This is not OSPR, this is not SIL. This is something that we want to continue to lock into this project and this programme of work. So perhaps we're being slightly clunky on the language because this is a slightly different set of circumstances, I think, Tom's nodding, than we would normally do. Normally, we might say, well, we actually have to close a project down, give the money back to the centre and then rebid for the money to come back out. We're not having to do that here because we've agreed with the Chamberlains that this remains a ring-fenced pot of money that can still be allocated to essentially work in that area that this new programme, as renamed, will deliver.
Thanks, Ian. Hugh, I'm glad you got confused because I was as well. But I think it's clear what they're trying to do. I mean, there's no. It's just a matter of, well, as Ian said, I'll paraphrase what he said, but you're just renaming something and moving funds in and out, and you have to cut it to start again because of fiscal reasons. But no experience, no money, nothing's lost. And it's all more consistent because you've got one group looking at the whole area. So I think it's okay. But got another question? I speaking on behalf of officers, I think the issue is just the clunky wording. I don't think it's clunky behind that. It's the clunky wording, and I think we can just pass it. But
Chair, I think 2 is clear. Recommendation 2: approve the renaming of the project. I think it's 3. I'm thinking on the fly here, but it's 3 is very specifically about the budget and moving the budget across. So it's not actually about closing the project. It's saying effectively, we just said, would the members approve the transfer of any remaining budget to the Liverpool Street Area Health Programme? Would that work?
Well, could you add budget after the project. So approve the closure of the Crossrail Liverpool Street Urban Integration Phase 2 project budget and the transfer of that budget to the new name of the.
Oh, makes sense.
Can we do that? Can we edit this on the fly?
We have a representative of Chamberlain's on the line. It's Olu. So I'm speaking for the Chamberlains, and actually Olu is here. So Olu, are you happy with that? Because this is really just about retaining the funding within that ring fencing and getting member approval to do that. If not, in the absence of the Chamberlain, yes, I'm sure we can.
Do you mind very much just clarifying that for the nose?
I don't want to steal Hugh's thunder. Can you give Judith the new sentence? Was that done? Approve? Thank you, Hugh. Well done.
Now we move on to item 6. This is an outcome report for a public realm enhancement project around the redevelopment of 100 Fetter Lane. It's for decision from page 45 of the pack. Thank you.
Any questions on this? Nope. Yep. You approve?
Item 7 is the policy and projects delegated decisions from July to September. This is for information and can be found on page 65 of the pack. Thank you.
Right. So I've asked Ian to give us a little talk on the outdoor fitness equipment on Old Waterman's Walk. Because Edward Lord and I would have preferred to have had this to vote, because then we could have put our names down to it, because we're very proud of this first step.
I think you can still be proud of this. So we're taking this decision and delegated on behalf of the committee. So the committee still can take the credit. Very happy to do that. So yes, this is as part of the wider sports strategy, perhaps the first location, certainly in recent times, where we've been looking to roll out sports and fitness equipment on the public realm. This is on the Riverside area. It's a location that we've identified in conjunction with our colleagues in planning and with the sports team. And this is it's a gateway 1-2, so it's really just the first step. It's actually establishing a project, establishing the constraints, the parameters, and saying what do we need to do to make this happen. So we're going through at the moment the nuts and bolts, usual processes of setting up budgets and doing this. The things that need to be done in the background, which include things like understanding the interest of the landowner, given this is on city walkways, somebody we actually have to identify and then consult with. And we also need to look at some of the things that we need to consider in the round for this and any further sports equipment on the highway. So things like safety and maintenance, those sorts of issues we're considering. But the key thing is, what is the choice of the equipment going to look like? What's a benefit to city stakeholders and fitness people who want to run around and then do whatever they want to do in this location? That piece of work is being done by the consultants team being employed by Sam Hutchins and the sports strategy team. So we are not experts in that area, and it's through his team that we are looking to understand what might be on offer. So it's effectively a twin track environment, a project managing it with all the nuts and bolts that we can bring to the table around both project governance and construction and management and everything else. It's Sam's team who will have the contacts as to say what is the art of the possible, what might be attractive, and then they'll be doing the monitoring once it's in. So it's a bit too early for us to understand timescales yet, but because that key piece of work, I appreciate, sits amongst a number of things that Sam's looking to do. But yeah, it's progressing forward, Chair.
So just one point, just for information. One of the reasons the sports strategy is starting with this one. There was something there already, so it's an easy call. But the more important thing is that this is within sight of the river, and there is some evidence, psychological evidence, that humans like to exercise in sight of rivers, the coast, lakes. It's something to do with the mind, and it just fits together. It's why you see people running, along the beach, along Thames Path. There's something about being next to water. So we want to give this the best chance of success. That's why we're starting here. But there is a plan in the sports strategy to make 5 more of these, not necessarily the same, but that's been approved by P&R, not budgeted, but approved. So this one is budgeted as well. So there's a lot hanging on the success of this. So when it's done, I encourage you all to go down there with your Leica on and pose for photographs. Anyway, I'm just trying to drag out the meeting because we're almost done.
Thank you. And moving on to item 8, which is outstanding references. This is for information and can be found on pages 11 to 12 of the pack. Thank
you. Go ahead, Tim.
Just ask a question on the Monument London Bridge project. It says here TfL confirmed the budget for the parapet works. You walk along there at the moment, it is a disgrace. And people would blame the city for it because we own the bridge. They don't understand that we don't own that particular part of it. What I want to know is, are we going to undertake the work on behalf of TfL, or are they undertaking the work, and are we making sure it's been supervised properly? Because we do want a permanent solution to this, and we don't want a half-baked solution. Thank you.
Can actually say I fully agree with the state of that of the work site at the moment. I personally raised it with colleagues at TfL about 2 weeks ago that the area has become just it's a rubbish tip. It's had graffiti on it. Yeah. All those. If that I haven't been there since, so it's interesting. Thank you for letting me know. I will follow up again with them because they reassured me that they were going to deal with at least the state of it, because if they are going to leave it for that length of time before they're able to afford to do the repairs, they need to keep it in an appropriate fit state for the public to see and move around fast. In terms of the work, it's TfL's road, it's TfL's bridge, it's TfL's road above and TfL's road below. So this is an instance where we are not really in a position to do it on their behalf. And actually the funding is the issue, in as much as TfL cannot fund it themselves to do, and they're not going, then therefore they wouldn't be willing to fund us to do it either. It is about TfL's wider funding position. With the chairman of the Grand Committee in the room, it's an opportunity for me to say that we'll be visiting with TfL senior management in about 2 weeks' time. It is a series of meetings that were set up under the past chairman of Planning and Transportation, and they are a useful touching point to raise issues with TfL. And funny enough, we were just working on what an agenda might look like this morning. So we'll be talking to the chairman and to TfL, and it's something I'm very happy to put on their agenda. I'd say it is linked to their continuing funding priorities, if I can put it that way.
We have a timeline.
Not at this point, but that's what we'll be asking them for in 2 weeks' time when we see them. So once we have that, again, we can come back to members.
Hugh, go ahead. Oh.
I want to ask about a timeline, bearing in mind this has been raised by me for the past 2 years. Whilst they have tidied up the planters, which are no longer planters, and they've put the wood back on, so that does deal with a lot of the littering. I have heard for the past 2 years that this is coming. Can we have a defined date to start and a completion date? And I think then we have some assurance that it's happening, because otherwise this is just going to stay on our action list for the next 2 years. It's disgusting, it's disgraceful, it's awful.
Go ahead, Hugh. Oh, Siobhan got the same thing, or was it all the same thing?
Without wanting to repeat Tim and then Marianne on this, it feels like we've been here before. This is in Bridge Ward. It's something that we hear from constituents about on a semi-regular basis. You might remember, Ian, we've been working together on this, or I've been bothering you on this over the course of many years, and you've very kindly shared the communications that you've had from TfL in the past. They said, we are about to do the detailed design work, we are doing the detailed design work, we are doing the detailed design work, we've completed the detailed design work, and yet now, so over many communications, they have said, it is done, we are doing it and then it is done. And now they say that they're going to do the detailed design work again. It feels very 2023 all over again. Does anything look different to you this time? And if not, please could you and the Grand Committee Chairman give them a real kicking about what frankly looks like dishonesty, like serious and repeated instances of dishonesty on TfL's part. Chairman.
I think it's fair to say probably all members of this committee have raised this with me in the past. So either from ward interests or from general passing by. So there is yes, I absolutely appreciate a groundswell of opinion, and the least they could do is keep it in a reasonable state and be honest and frank and open about timescales. That I fear that this is continuing to be one of those ones where other things are always prioritized over this, because while it is safe, and TfL reiterate that frankly nothing is falling off the structure onto the road below, then it is something that can then be left until money is available. That is the question that we need to raise with TfL and say, as members say here, you need to commit to us with the timescale rather than just say when budgets allow. We're all in a degree of that position at the moment, but we need to understand something that we can take away from TfL that actually makes sense, that we're able to pass.
Tom, will you be at this meeting? So, I mean, you can recount this is basically unchanged since the pandemic, really.
I think we meet at TfL tomorrow at a less senior level, and then a couple of weeks later as a senior level. So perhaps we can get some clarity out of those two meetings and come back in to the next meeting and confirm all of that. Yeah.
And Siobhan came first. Siobhan, you covered. Yeah. Okay.
Ask a theoretical question. If this was a building and it was left a rack and ruin, I think planning have certain powers where they can, and it's deemed unsafe. Planning would have powers to be able to enforce works on the owner. What powers do we have if this keeps dragging on for us to reach some sort of conclusion, i.e. we do the work and rebuild TfL, or we issue them with a notice where they have to make the area safe and do the work? So what leverage do we have and what powers do we have?
I'd have to take that away, but it is TfL structure, it's TfL's highway. We do not have step-in rights. It's very clearly, we are not the highway authority, we are not the structure owner. Yes, we are the geographical local authority. So the question is, as local authority, I appreciate corporation sensitivities about calling ourselves such, but as the local authority for the area, I would have to see whether we do have any leverage with them. Planning, I'm not aware that planning would have some form of oversight on this, but we will do the work and see whether we can find out whether there is anything.
Can I ask a theoretical question as well? I mean, this has been going on for so long. I wonder, why is this with TfL? I mean, could we actually buy this off them and be done with it? Buy the London Bridge. The other bit's ours. There's a little bit there that isn't. I understand the strategic routes, but we always work with TfL on strategic routes. Can we actually have the conversation?
I have spent a lot of time looking at the ownership of this particular thing with colleagues such as Paul Monaghan, you know Paul. That part of the bridge structure was constructed by the city as highway authority, creating a road leading to the bridge, as in which is owned by City Bridge Foundation. Anything that was constructed under the city's highway authority powers and owned and held as the city as highway authority was subsumed by TfL at the creation of TfL. This is the matter that went to the High Court of Appeal 10 years ago, where the city was challenging air rights and underrights and all of those things in relation to TfL's assumption of control. And this is one of those things where somebody's asset is somebody else's liability. We take that on. We don't take it. It would be difficult to do, but we also then become liable for all of those costs in perpetuity. I doubt TfL would seek to sell it. I doubt we, the corporation, and necessarily RASC, would want to buy it. But it is that the bridge is very separate. The London Bridge as a structure is very separate to this bridge, and that's been proven through legal process.
So what you're saying, Ian, is the answer to Siobhan's question, that was the High Court decision. Okay. Should we move on? Yep. Alison?
Thank you. Moving on then to item 9, which is questions on matters relating to the work of the subcommittee. Alderman Alison Gowman has indicated that she would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. And I did actually give you some notice by putting an email to you and some others last night. It's concerning the plans for Islington, our neighbouring borough, to carry out a scheme on St John Street and Calcross Street, which immediately abuts into the Smithfield Market area. And as a scheme in its own right, you know, it ticks all the boxes in terms of greening and more pleasant, etc. But I'm a bit concerned about the context being right on our border, recalling the fact that when we, as the corporation, have started to do work, particularly around the Barbican Golden Lane scheme, obviously we were saying we were going to be working very closely with Islington on any issues around traffic and traffic displacement, etc. So I'm sure the same implications work here. I've been through Islington's website to dig out their paper that went to their committee in May, the consultation that they had with the public, and also the actual scheme itself. So I've tried to get myself up to speed about this. But I gather the work did start, or was proposed to be starting, at the beginning of September. And there has been some concern, particularly from the market traders, around that implication. St John Street, if people aren't aware, is one of the 4 access points for the market by heavy goods vehicles. And the proposal is that you cannot access Smithfield Market travelling southbound on St John Street, although you would be able to come away from the market going northbound. So I'll come to my questions. First of all, what role does the City Corporation play regarding works on streets immediately adjacent to and servicing the city, i.e. the point I made about engaging with our neighbours? What response to the statutory consultation did the City Corporation make to that proposal to close the southern part of St John Street? What consultation did the City Corporation undertake with regard to the impact on Smithfield Market, i.e. in making any response, how did they consider the impact on the city and its businesses, Smithfield Market traders, other businesses in West Smithfield as well, bearing in mind the likely adverse impact it will have on the market? And what steps can now be taken to ensure that HGV access to Smithfield is not materially damaged, or that the works are deferred, either until the London Museum works are completed or until the meat market itself is likely to be closed? Thank you.
Ian, I'll let you answer first.
Thank you, Chair. So just to close off some of the points around perhaps process first, if works are being intended or road changes are being intended in streets outside our area, then strictly we don't have a formal role in influencing that, albeit we are consulted, and we were the City of London was engaged with as part of the consultation towards the end of last year, and in this current process with London Borough of Islington, they have the city is a statutory consultee as a neighbouring authority. Now, in terms of process to that response to the statutory consultation, that response is from the City of London Corporation. Now, obviously, in the city, we all are aware the city wears a number of hats, and in both the consultation previously and in this latest statutory consultation, we are fully aware that there will be a view taken on this change in Islington from both the Markets Board, members who represent the market, and the Smithfield Market Trade Association. It is absolutely right and appropriate for them to make their representation as part of the city, to be the City of London's response in terms of replying to that statutory consultation. It is not a requirement that all parts of the organisation reply, and in this case there is an argument to say a very clear argument around the views of the market and any impact on the market from closing St John Street, for which they will be only too aware of how many vehicles come in that way, what the potential impacts might be, what the mitigations might necessarily need to be. Now, for this committee, your remit is slightly different. Clearly, when we are proposing as officers schemes and changes to our highway, we are always trying to be open and present all sides of the argument for you to make a decision, and that usually recognises pros and cons on both sides. In terms of this particular scheme, as the Alderman says, there are some significant benefits from that scheme in terms of accessibility, air quality, greening, cycle safety, pedestrian flow, all of those sorts of things. And we recognise, alternatively, that any closure around the market, whether temporary or permanent, will have some form of impact on access to and from the market. In terms of our response before to the consultation and now, any response that we would make would have to balance those two things. We would have to say there are some good things and there are some bad things, potentially some very good things, potentially some challenges for the market. It is our opinion as officers that actually it would be more beneficial to the market for them to focus on their response and not necessarily have the city as highway authority actually try and present what would be a balanced view, because clearly this is about trying to, we understand the market's position, they want to make a case to say the work should be deferred. So in terms of the previous response, we remained neutral, and it was our intention as officers for this statutory consultation as officers in the Environment Department to remain neutral, to allow the focus from the market side of city surveyors to be very clear about their views, and therefore not have necessarily draw in the position from the city as to whether or not the benefits of the scheme were outweighed by the disbenefits to the market. So I appreciate that means we are looking at the city in its various different hats, but it was our intention to allow the market's viewpoint to be the focus of the City of London's response to the consultation.
Just clarify, because I think there are potentially two consultations here that have or are taking place. I'd understood that Islington have, in a sense, put a slight halt on what they're doing simply because they haven't made the formal statutory consultation to the corporation. Is that right? So they did the public thing, and I can see on the paperwork here, SMT replied and the city replied. I think that was probably the market director replying, and they were against it, but they were in a minority in terms of numbers. But is there a new consultation that's just come out? And why is that needed at the last minute when supposedly they've started the work? Please.
Sam might, or Bruce,
Yep.
you'd be better good at.
Oh, thanks.
So this isn't unusual, and we do the same on our projects as well. So there's a public consultation about the scheme, and then there's a statutory consultation on the traffic order to enable any traffic changes to it, and that's the consultation that's happening now for it. So that's a fairly usual process for it. It would be the same if we were doing a similar project as well.
But there is no, sorry to go on about this, but there's no locus for the market tenants or for the Smithfield market to make a comment if they're not the statutory body. You know, if the statutory body is the corporation, that is in this regard, you, the Highways Department, Well, then I think we need to know who it is. Yes. So it's a matter of whether or not this committee feels that the body corporate, with any representations from us either way, should either remain neutral, should say, please, Islington, can you please defer, or can you change it, or stop entirely, or go ahead. I mean, whatever the other options are, which I may not have covered.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify, it's a little bit confusing because we talk about statutory consultation and statutory consultees. The statutory consultee is that you have to be notified and consulted through it. There's also a statutory consultation period, at which point anybody can comment on a traffic order for it as well. So anybody can submit a comment through the statutory during this period. It doesn't have to come from us just because we happen to be a statutory consultee in the process.
Edward, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. That's okay. Sorry. I suppose the point is that, thank you. Sorry. I guess the point is then that the various bodies should consider it. As you say, you're suggesting that the market tenants or the market itself should make those representations. I don't know if it'd make more weight if it came as the body corporate rather than as an element of the body corporate. It's perhaps unusual that the body corporate should have a quite possibly diametrically opposed views about this, really. But I'd be interesting to know where we could resolve it, other than this committee making a comment and personally just going away and telling the market traders what I've heard today.
I mean, Alice, if we are you suggesting that we make a comment, then we have to discuss the balance, because there's clearly a balance, and as this is one of 4 access roads to the market, and this is actually, as you pointed out in your preface, only accessible in one direction. There's so many issues. I think it will be cleaner actually for the markets just to be the only one to respond, because then they can respond with one answer as opposed to attempt to cloud their angst with a balance which we would insist being there. So I think we're better to keep quiet. I mean, on both sides.
I think, Chair, I agree with you. Just to clarify, when we are being consulted as a body corporate, presumably it is usually officers who will prepare a response on behalf of the body corporate and will do so under the terms of delegated authority. So I'm assuming, therefore, that there is delegated authority to prepare a response, and members shouldn't really be interfering in this unless there is good cause.
Certainly the process that we have followed, I can't speak for other committees, but the process that we have followed for this committee is, if we are not able to engage with committee members, we will make it clear that the response is coming from us as officers. So we are quite clear about that. It usually carries more weight if what we have is a response that's at least agreed in part or in specific delegation from the committee in consultation with the chairman and deputy chairman. That's the normal process that we would adopt. So we had a consultation, forgive me, I can't remember which one it was fairly recently, but we drafted a response, we shared it here. We knew that there would be views, there might be tweaks to that, and we said delegate to officers the final wording in consultation with the chairman and deputy chairman. No, because otherwise it's the response of officers and not the committee.
Thank you, Ian. Hugh, and then Marianne. Oh, Marianne first. I think you did have your hand up first, Marianne.
Thank you. Regardless of whether or not there are pros and cons, and which I'm sure there are, and there will probably be more pros once the market moves. I don't think anyone would have any objection to this road being closed once the market moves. Until the market moves, there are probably more issues that it's going to create. I'm just suggesting, because I haven't seen the detailed plan. And therefore, how are those issues going to be mitigated, and on whose roads are they going to have to be mitigated on? I.e., if they're our roads, then I would have thought, as a highway authority, we should be putting in a comment on the impact it's going to have on our streets and the pedestrianised area around there. So it would be helpful if there was some sort of report that would come to this committee to find out what the issues are and where they're going to be mitigated, who's responsible for mitigating them, and whether or not we believe on balance it'd be better for this road to be closed once the market moves and not before.
Marianne, the vast majority of the traffic is not on this road. Go ahead.
Respect, I don't know that because I haven't seen a report, and I you know, Alison's just raised this issue, and until we have all the information in front of us, none of us can make a detailed decision. And that's my whole point. Who's going to mitigate the traffic if it's moving off of one road onto another? Where's it going to go? What's the impact? I don't know because there's no information. If there was information, we could take an informed decision, and that would be the correct way to do so.
Ryan, go ahead.
Just on that, I mean, when we had Beach Street Tunnel, for example, and you had that sort of cross-border, whatever you want to call it, element, thank you, county lines. When you had that sort of cross-border cooperation with Islington, there were conversations had to discuss exactly what the routing should be and how it should work. I don't see why we can't do that here and actually get some modelling and get some data before we reply as a corporation.
Siobhan, the second time round, yes, not the first time round. Yeah, Beach Street second phase was a good example.
If I can just,
Hugh's got a point, and then you can wrap it up with. Do you want to answer, Ian? I mean, Edwin is right. It would be great to have the figures. I mean, in actual fact, 99% of the traffic does not. Smithfield goes up and down the main street because this main street is wide, goes straight to Farringdon Street. This particular street's got bends, blind corners, islands. I mean, I walked there every day for 18 months. I never saw any vehicle from Smithfield. And I know the street extremely well because I spent 18 months working on a house just up the road from there. So, well, it's not even possible to go one particular direction with HGV. But having said all that, sure, if we were to make some formal approach to Islington, we couldn't do it without the data, and we don't have the data, I don't think. So, yes. Ian.
So, firstly, just to be clear, we are 10 days into a 21-day statutory consultation period. So we have just over a week to actually submit a response should it choose to. So the opportunity to do any data capture, any data analysis at all, or even the assessment of pros and cons, we do not have the timescale for that. To a degree, the people who have that data should be Smithfield Market, the SMTA, and the London Borough of Islington, who have done due diligence on this scheme. Now, I'm saying that if what members want us to do is offline talk to Islington about the due diligence that they have applied to this, to understand the mitigation factors that they would feel are appropriate, then I see no reason why we can't have that conversation in discussion with Islington. Does that mean, as officers, I would recommend you actually join the SMTA and the markets part of the City Surveyors Department? You know, they are the body politic here. I would still caution against it, because we do not have the data to back it up. We just don't have that. So those parties that have skin in this game do have that information. The point around access access to that area, it is our understanding and without the data, it is our impression, perhaps that's the best way to put it, that this is not a regular HGV route into the market. And even if it was, the obvious alternative route is Farringdon Street, which is part of the Transport for London road network, which is intended to take HGV traffic. Actually, should we want HGVs coming down on street into the market? Probably not. But that's not to say that it could be used for other vehicles coming into this space. I think the key thing, from my point of view, is to be slightly pragmatic about this and say, regardless of what the outcome of this is going to be, we want some reassurance, and I take the points from members, about what is going to be the impact once this happens. In fact, we will see that even as soon as the temporary works actually start, if there are impacts on the market, because it's not, the impact isn't when the scheme finishes, it's when construction starts, because that's when the road gets closed. So we will see very quickly whether there are issues. Now, I appreciate that's after all of this process plays out. But I go back to my previous point, is that what Islington are delivering has substantial benefits, and whatever we would choose to do would be saying there are concerns and issues about this, but equally we recognise the benefits of what you are delivering. I appreciate what the market's argument is. It's about timing. It's pure and simply, it's about timing. So yeah, I think from our point of view, our position has been to be clear and help our colleagues in city surveyors and markets about process. It's not obvious. Islington have had to stop work and realise that they've missed a step and go back and do this process. So they are not in a good place procedurally. We are helping our colleagues to understand the process. And as Bruce says, the fact that this is a process that the City of London can respond to. It doesn't have to be the City of London brackets Highway Authority or the City of London brackets Markets Board. It is going to be the City of London's response. And if this committee doesn't choose to express a view either way, it allows the markets to actually have a very clear and concise and direct response to that consultation without having to do that balancing act. Chair.
Ian's coming back in. Hugh's coming back in.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of questions for the committee. Firstly, do we believe that we should take a negative view of the scheme in the absence of any data to reassure us, or the absence of any reports to reassure us that the impact on the city will be mitigated? And secondly, what weight, in considering the benefits and disbenefits of the scheme, what weight should we give to benefits which will accrue solely to Islington versus benefits that will accrue to the city? Chairman.
Well, here I can start addressing some of those points. I mean, you phrased the question, do we consider this to be a negative thing? I mean, I think we can turn that around and say, do we consider it to be a positive thing? Because it is actually, it's a wonderful scheme right next to the museum. I might need your vote if it goes to that. You're betting. I mean, bother. Sinking ship. No, I mean, seriously, this is a neat scheme. If they can get this finished before the museum opens, at least that's going to be some fantastic public realm. It's you've seen it's rain gardens, it's trees, it's seating, it's brilliant. And so there's this, if we do the weighing up thing, positive versus negative, and we haven't got the data to do that, but if we're going to say anything, we have to do all of that. And I would argue strongly in favour of sending Islington a letter of congratulations. What a neat scheme. And now, I say, I know you want me to do that, so I won't. But if you just go another couple hundred metres up the road on Clerkenwell, they've done a scheme just like this. And I tell you what, I mean, I know Bruce don't make me like to say this, but they're as good as us. And then they do it with less money, probably. They took a horrible car park, rain gardens, trees. It's brilliant. And it's just up the road. And they want to do the same right in front of the museum. They're doing our job for us.
For the data, because I assume that they must have done something and couldn't find it at all on the Islington website. Obviously, sometimes these reports can be one step behind. I mean, I'd be very happy for Hugh's suggestion to be put to the committee as to whether or not we feel, how did you phrase it, that we would want to intervene to, what did you say, Hugh, to intervene?
If reports or data can't be provided in order to
would we
us that the negative aspects of the scheme that we are aware of
are
sufficiently mitigated.
Could we take a vote?
Tim.
Just to try and be helpful, we can't have two responses from the city corporation. We can't have Ian suggesting a corporate response, which would probably be in favour of this scheme, and the city surveyors opposing it. So there's one of two things. Either from a corporate point of view, we say nothing and allow the city surveyors to effectively speak for the city. That would be my preference. I also think that you ought to be careful because the Markets Bill is making its way through Parliament. Members of Parliament might suggest, are you trying to put pressure on us by suggesting that you cut off access to the market in order to force them to agree to the bill? Now, you don't want to do that. So I think that from a corporate point of view, it would be better to keep quiet and allow the city surveyors to put their points.
And also, Tim, that means there is only one opinion coming from the corporation, which is in favour of the Smithfield decision, which is actually what Edward agreed was going to speak again.
Chairman, can I propose that this subcommittee does not authorise its officers to make a response to the Islington statutory consultation, but instead relies on a response being submitted by the City Surveyors Department, and further that the notes of this discussion be provided to the City Surveyor to inform the City Surveyor as to the members of this subcommittee's views on the project. Because I think...
Can I just...
Yes, you can.
In those circumstances, would the city's response have the weight of being a statutory consultee?
Yes.
Yeah. Ian, can you answer, Hugh?
Just check. Apologies, I was just checking Jill's going to our meeting next door for our other matter. Sorry, Hugh, could you imagine? Can you?
If, as Edward proposes, we make an active decision not to comment from this part of the corporation and instead allow the city surveyor to respond on behalf of the corporation, would the city surveyor's response in those circumstances carry the weight of being a statutory consultee?
Yes, because they are responding on behalf of the City of London Corporation. Yes.
But can I just add, sorry, I mean, there's no guarantee that the city surveyor will take this step, but all we can do as this committee or this subcommittee is probably to make a decision of no response, no comment. Yeah, but with a request, perhaps, as Ian's already indicated, that they will be able to help with process if necessary, or an understanding to their colleagues and the city surveyors.
I think as Ian wants clarity so that it doesn't confuse Islington regarding which body is responding, if we make it crystal clear that it's the city surveyor's responsibility and therefore this committee has instructed officers not to engage or respond back, I think that gives the clarity.
So in summary, then, all this conversation goes in the minutes and goes straight to the city surveyors, and in these minutes, all this has got to be mentioned. You know, the concerns about, well, there is no actual traffic count; it's all just hearsay from people like me. I mean, what's the reality? Because I wasn't there at 2 a.m. And the other side of it, you know, the greening and all that. So all that's got to go. If it's written up quick and then sent, they can respond before the week.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been talking to city surveyors for a week on this, around this question. They were the ones who brought it to our attention, saying that's what they intend doing in response to the direction of the Markets Committee, Markets Board. So I have every expectation the city surveyors will be doing that. We are quite content to provide them with pointers around some of the points of clarification that members here have raised, and they can use that in whatever way they wish to. I have to remind everybody, today is on the record, it's in public session, this information is available. So, yeah, that's it.
To agree.
Okay, so I moved that the officers supporting this subcommittee be directed not to make a formal response to the statutory consultation, but instead noted that the City Surveyors Department will be making a response on behalf of the City of London Corporation, and that the notes of this discussion be provided to the City Surveyor along with any additional information from the Director of City Operations to advise the contents of their response. Does that make sense?
Inform, probably.
Inform, yeah. Good.
Something before I hit this hammer?
I just wanted to ask a quick question about the Silvertown Tunnel and the Blackwall Tunnel tolls, and if we could have some feedback at some point on the impact or not that it's having on Tower Bridge and the traffic around the city, but that's for future.
Right here. Yeah. Can we? Yes, Marion, before you. Well, this is a public meeting. Let's formally raise our hands.
Thank you.
Marianne, civil tone.
Yes, we could bring those TfL are producing periodic reports. So next time once of those are out, we can bring an update report. So yeah.
I think the meeting's over. We're not.
It's another bit to the agenda.
Is there?
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
No, okay.